The format of tonight's meeting is to have a guest speaker share their experience, strength and hope on how the Alcoholics Anonymous program of recovery is working in their lives for 15 to 20 minutes. Tonight we've asked Ross to share.
Yeah, my name is Ross, I'm an alcoholic. Sober tonight, thank God, and thanks for having me here. I like this meeting. I haven't been here for a while, but I like this meeting. So, I'm an alcoholic. I qualified a long time ago. I got here 17 years ago. I got here in the appropriate position, which was on my knees, smashed by alcohol. And I was a very sick person. I didn't know quite how sick I was. I knew that I had a life I didn't want anymore, which involved being a drunk daily. I didn't have a day off. I always got drunk. I always behaved inappropriately. I never woke up feeding the poor or helping, handing out blankets to the needy. I woke up in the wrong bedroom with the wrong person, always of the opposite gender, which was good. I couldn't guarantee my behaviour, apart from it would be bad. And I'm a health practitioner. Those of you who heard me do the doctor's opinion last year, that's where I work. During the day I was trying to be useful. At night I was out looking for a fight or looking for other things beginning with F. And I had, if you'd asked me in those days, who are you, what do you believe in, I couldn't have told you. I had no idea what my values were, if I had any, what my morals were. And that hadn't been how I started off. I started off as a sort of a guy with some promise, got to uni, discovered alcohol, and went from there. So just to give you a quick picture of what I was like before I came to this fellowship, I was a daily drunk. I developed an intense anxiety, and I was having panic attacks. I was agoraphobic. Sometimes I couldn't leave. I used to work from home. I couldn't leave the house. I was fortifying alcohol with tranquilizers and trying to stop the sweats and the shakes and act like a normal human being. And at the end, I had at one stage been married with a lot of alkies there, with a big house, big Mercedes actually, and a beach house, and I ended up on my own riding a bicycle. And one of the things that stuck out in my mind was like one stage I had a huge bunch of keys with the practice, with my car with the two houses. I was out on one key, a little plastic tab, which was the front door of a rental house. I couldn't even afford a lock for the bicycle. And I would wake at 3 or 4 in the morning with the sweats and the shakes and an intense sense of despair and dread and a feeling of catastrophe, impending doom, because doom was certainly impending. And I knew nothing about this fellowship, which is an indictment on the profession. I knew nothing about this fellowship. I'd sort of vaguely heard of it. I had no idea what it was about. I had no idea of life after alcohol. I just assumed if you didn't drink, you were boring and then you died. I didn't know anybody who didn't drink. I didn't trust people who didn't drink. And I was terrified of what might happen if I stopped. I had this, part of my intense anxiety was I thought alcohol was a solution, that if I stopped drinking, the stuff that I could feel bubbling around inside was going to consume me. And I was too frightened to not drink, and I was too frightened to drink. I was stuck, and I had seen a psychiatrist, and he talked about a device to reseal the bottle of wine halfway through to keep the air in, or air out. I don't know what it was, because I didn't ever use it. I couldn't imagine not drinking. I couldn't imagine stopping after I'd started. I didn't have the words like powerless over alcohol. My life was unmanageable. My life was stuffed. And alcohol had me completely. I honestly don't know where the thought came to come here. I had my kids for an access weekend. I borrowed a car to drive them home. I drove them home with one eye closed, which was the way I drove in those days. And I'd get another bottle of wine, which I didn't want to have. And I felt sick, I felt ill, and I woke up the next morning. I had to cancel the day. I was appallingly ill. And I rang Central Office, and I do not know where that thought came. I looked up Alcoholics Anonymous on the internet, rang Central Office, spoke to the late Con Weir. Those of you who know, Con had been around for a while. Con died a few years ago now. And for once in my life I said, I drink too much and I can't stop. I had a whole lot of other stuff. I told me a huge raft of problems. Married, well, I wasn't married, I was divorced, but I didn't have any money, the kids didn't like me anymore, and I had no friends, I hated myself. And I said, but I can't stop myself from drinking. I can't stop what happens when I drink. This was about 11:30 on a Monday morning, which was the 12th of February 1996. And he said, there's a meeting in about an hour and a half time at the gallery. And I thought an hour and a half was far too soon. Maybe next week might have been a better idea. But I'd already cancelled the day because I was feeling so sick. And I went to the old gallery, which was at St Francis Church, the corner of Lonsdale, Elizabeth Street. And it's moved a few times since then. And the interesting thing was you couldn't see in until you were in. There was sort of this monastery hall at the back of the church, and there was a bunch of people milling around. And you went down these dark stairs, and I thought that was the end of my life. I didn't know what alcoholism was. I knew I was a drunk. I knew my life was over. I was a divorcee. I was a crappy father. I was a shocking professional. I was 42 years of age, and I thought, that's it. Life's over. I got to the foot of the stairs, and Pizza Bill was there, and Pizza Bill, of course, has died. And he looked at my white, sweating, shaking frame and said, "Are you new?" And I didn't know how he knew I was new, but I said, "Yes, I was." And he said, "Welcome home." And so for those of you who are new, you're welcome home. And Frank T, who's a Scottish fellow, gave me half a cup of tea, which I thought was very Scottish of him. And I was told to sit down and shut up, and I was very happy to do that. I had nothing to say, and I sat there and I heard people sharing their experience, strength, but I heard people talking about feeling disconnected, feeling like they didn't belong, feeling like that somehow they were on the wrong planet. I can recall vividly sitting on the deck at my first marriage, looking at my family on the inside while I sat on the outside having a glass of wine and smoke, and feeling much more comfortable outside on my own drinking, looking at them through the window than I did on the inside being part of the family. And I finally understood this was an illness, and it was an incurable illness. It was there still isn't any known medical cure for alcoholism. It's fatal. It's progressive. It's demoralising. It's devastating. And I had it, and I knew I had that illness. And the symptoms were common, bad behaviour, can't stop drinking, drinking inappropriately, all that sort of stuff. The symptoms are easy to identify. But the illness, is an appalling illness. And I know once you've got it, you've got it. So I heard enough, and enough sunk in to think, I better not drink. I didn't have a concept of life after alcohol. I just knew that if I drank, I was in deep shit. And I could see the progression of the illness. I was getting worse and worse and worse. And I had an abnormal liver function test. I was in the cardiac ward twice in the last year with abnormal heartbeats. I needed quite a bit of digoxin to get my heartbeat normal again. I drove with one eye closed and all the other stuff you get up to. The police knocked on my door in the last year, and nothing came of that. But it was going to be good headline in the paper. Went to Ivanhoe that night. I've had a drink since. It's nearly 17 years ago. So 12th of February. And on the 20th of February, I'll be 60 years of age. So I was 42 when I got here. And it's been a very slow progress. People talked about, because of men and women, and they talked about the program, and I remember looking under the chair and thinking, I don't know where they put the bloody programs because I can't find them. And a number of times people said about a program, and I thought, well, I don't know, where the bloody hell are they? And just assumed that, I'd rather be lost than ask direction. I'd rather just not know than act like I was stupid, so I didn't ask anyone what the program was. I did regular frequent meetings, I heard people speaking, they talked about a program, they talked about a God, which the God idea terrified me as well. And at about 6 months sober, 6 months off the drink, I went up to an older sober member, Marcus Kay, who looks like the higher power. He's a huge bloke. And I said, I don't think this program works. I don't think it works. He said, have you had a drink today? And I said, no. He said, well, it's working pretty well. And I said, I know, but I'm miserable. My preference is euphoria and bliss and happiness. And of course, what I was experiencing was the emotions of a bloke who started drinking at 16 and who hadn't grown up since then. I felt I was raw, I couldn't cope, I couldn't live a life. Didn't know how to live life without alcohol. And he said, there is a program. And he finally explained to me the 12 steps of the fellowship were a program, And the first step had two parts. One part was about alcohol, the other part was about your life. And if you stop drinking, you still got the unmanageable life. You take alcohol out of a fruitcake, you still got a fruitcake. And it was a living program. It wasn't a stopping drinking program, it was a living program. And that sort of made some sense. My life's unmanageable. I got to find a new manager. I got to hire him. It took a long time with the third step. I didn't want to become a missionary. I was convinced that if I said to God, my understanding, I'm yours, he would say, right, mate, you've had a nice time, off to be useful for someone else. And I balked at that for quite a long time. But I was finding that I was 43 years of age at this stage, and things like I was on the phone to Marcus, and my parents drove up the driveway, and I'd now had a rented house, which was quite a nice house. And I remember saying to Marcus, my parents are coming, what'll I do? He said, hang up and answer the door. Right. I was lost. I was a pathetic, lost person. And then we got to the God step, and then finally, pain has been my only. It's not been because I had a really good idea and I critically rationalised it and analysed it. It was because the pain of not drinking and trying to live was too much for me. I couldn't do it. And those who seemed to be able to get through life a bit more comfortably than I did had always talked about a higher power. So that was good enough for me. It's changed over the years from a woman in the sky to a bloke in the sky to an amorphous mass. The only thing I need to know is not me. In fact, my first birthday card from Marcus was a marble. He said, getting your marbles back. And a card which had a picture of a person with the solar system rotating around it. Said, that's not you anymore. So thanks, Marcus. And it's progressed since then. It is a very slow journey. And the immense stuff is frightening. Facing up and saying, I'm a drunk, I'm an alcoholic, I have an illness, I need to tell you I'm sorry, or I need to take some actions to show you that I'm trying to be more useful as a son, as a father, as a colleague, as a friend, and stopping telling lies. I used to try and be who I thought you wanted me to be. I would craft the most elaborate stories around that, and I had to be just straight and say, this is who I am. I'm reasonably competent in some things, I'm extremely uncompetent in other things. I'm just another pebble on the beach. I'm nothing special, and there's nothing. I'm not worse than, but I'm certainly not better than. And that took a long time. And the key for me has been a higher power. And I know when I'm travelling off town really quickly, because the world starts to get difficult. People start to look a bit strange. When I'm travelling well, I have a sense that I sort of know you when we're sort of friends. Not buddies, but we're sort of, the world feels safe. When I'm not travelling well, the world feels unsafe. And I know that that's the distance between me and my higher power. I had a thing recently, I was really depressed after Christmas. I'm going through a second appalling bloody marriage breakup. Haven't mastered the relationship bit yet. I've got a couple of little kids, so they're only 8 and so I was 52 when they were born. And I got really depressed, thinking this is all too fucking hard. And I realised I wasn't doing enough meetings, I wasn't praying, I wasn't talking to anyone. And the real trap for me is to think I can run my own life, because clearly I can't. I never could. Alcohol was a means by which I deluded myself for a long time. I was sort of coping. Now I don't have any excuses. I don't have anywhere else to run. I don't have a back door anymore. When you've been around for a while, there's nowhere to hide. You've got to stand up and face up and cop it. And I can't figure stuff out when that's happening. My head's not a pretty place. I was told things like, don't go into your head unaccompanied by an adult. Your head's a really bad neighbourhood. Approach with caution. They get a couple of other opinions. Keep moving forward. So that's what I've done. So it's just day at a time. It'll be 17 years on the 12th of February. I hope to make that. I have no guarantees. I might get hit by a truck. In fact, I saw a bloke who did his 4th step and then got hit by a truck. And I said, it still could happen. He survived when he got hit by a truck, which was a really good thing. He wasn't all that impressed by, done the deed, this is what happened. It's the thing I want to leave, the message, if I've got any at all, is life after alcohol can be fantastic. It wasn't doom and gloom and ginger ale and Jesus, which is what I thought it was going to be. It wasn't sort of living on my own, reading women's weeklies, drinking a pot of tea and wearing a beige cardigan, which I also thought it might have been. Things like, when I was drinking, I was terrified of flying. I somehow got a real phobia about planes, and I started to have to do quite a bit of travel, and I started doing it with the big book. I was sitting in business class with the big book, and the bloke next to me having a look, which was fine by me. So I still take the big book in my briefcase. I just had to let go, let God, and get on the plane. I go around the world quite regularly. Always with the big book, always knowing that I'm not doing this. I'm not the guy who's preventing the fear. I'm not the guy who's making life happen. The Just for Today card and a few other things. Here's the architect. I'm just the guy who sort of gets up, says good morning God before I leak. If I don't do it the other way around, I'm running the day. And try and do the right thing. And when I do that, I travel well. I don't need to drink because I can live. I don't know where it's going. So far, so good. So thanks for having me.